Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 280 of Kouryer Podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Xander Smith. He's a digital artist in film, TV, fashion from California, in the United States. And yes, I think it was episode 263 with Yishusi, which I did this kind of format of having the guest, do go through some of his workflow and, works while we speak. So I got a lot of positive feedback from that. So we're backing in with another episode kind of in the same vein. And also a fun little fact about this episode, just like with Taylor Oliver's episode, which I mentioned a couple of days ago, Xander Smith's episode was also in my unfinished folder from years ago. So actually, originally, I think the date of the folder is from 7th of March of 2022. Yes, 2022. And yeah, but I mean, we're almost 2 years after here right now. Right now is 23rd of March 2024, so we're back after two years. So I'm glad we could do the podcast finally. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer. And yeah, so before going to the conversation, let me quickly mention that in the captions you can find the ID to his Instagram account, the links to his art station, and the link to a print store in his art session store as well. So if you want to support our today's guest, you can definitely do so from there. And with that being said, an introduction out of the way, how are we doing today?
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that we're finally able to do this, Ramton. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Like aside from you, there's like two more podcasts I've scheduled for the next couple of days, and yeah, we're getting really close to episode 300, which was my goal and quota for this year. So yeah, that's nice to know. And by the way, I was wondering, I'm just gonna ask you right now, it's kind of like out of topic, but for every 100, I consider every 100 episode a season of the podcast, right?
Okay.
So, and each 100 episode has its own like color palette, like it's distinct color which I use in all the graphics. So for it, season 1 was a certain shade of green, season 2 blue, this season yellow. But what is your suggestion for the next season?
Oh, you already know what I'm gonna say, man.
Red.
You gotta go with the red palette, man.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of red in your works as well. I mean,
oh yeah, I'm obsessed right now. No, I like the kind of thinking about it in seasons. It's like almost what I've been doing every couple of years. I was like blue a couple of years ago. I've been wanting to do the red forever. So here we are. I'm like in it right now. Join me. It's very freeing.
Yeah, I've got a lot of orange, pink, violet, purple, those sort of shades, but red makes a lot of sense. It's a primary color as well. No, is it?
I'm considered a primer. It's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's very polarizing, you gotta have
I like red actually. It's the color of the Brotherhood of Not from Tiberium Wars. Have you played that game?
No, I have not. I gotta check it out though. It's in the red.
Yeah.
I liked the green black that you had though. Very distinct. That's great. That was your season 2, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Your palette for season 2, you had green black, right?
No. That was season 1. Season 2 was blue and black.
Okay, when I think of the brand for your podcast, I think green.
Yeah, I mean that was basically the start of it, and even the whole graphics of the YouTube channel and everything is just, even the logo on Spotify is still green.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But yeah, actually, that makes sense because that's what the original color was. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how red will. I think red will look cool. I need to find a specific shade of red, because I pick a specific shades of each color, right?
Oh yeah. You got to be very, very precise. It took me a while to get to the exact shade of red I was looking for. Oh my god, artist. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually send the hex code of the shade of red you're using because I might experiment with it. If that's okay.
I'm curious to see it, man. It's a good shade. I got to figure out a proper word for it. I've been asked about it a couple times on podcasts now, but there's got to be a cool, specific, very artsy way to say that particular shade of red.
Yeah, I get it. And also the drink you're drinking right now is also red, so that's kind of interesting.
Happenstance, yeah. Everything.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm kind of craving some cranberry juice right now for some reason. Maybe it's the red I just saw.
I know, right? Probably my fault. Yeah. But yeah, man, this will be cool. We got a red Met going. We're going to get into all things red. It'll be good.
All right. And what is this? Could you tell us a little bit of the make we're seeing right now?
Yeah, for sure.
What are we doing today?
Okay, we're gonna see how far we can get today. I'm not very good at having like the conversation and demoing at the same time. My students will definitely be able to tell you that, but hopefully we can make a couple moves on this mech. Yeah, I mean, ZBrush has been like a huge staple in my career. I use it basically every single day of my life. It's probably been like the number one program that I've used in my career. So I've kind of just found myself like whenever I need to like relax, I'll just like hop into ZBrush, start pushing and pulling forms around, things like that. So this is just a product of that. Maybe a couple weeks ago, like one Sunday. Usually I take like Sunday evenings off to just decompress, work on a personal project. And yeah, so he's kind of been a piece that I've been working on for the past few Sundays. That's all.
Right, awesome. And all right, so while you're doing your whole process and I'm going to start asking the questions and move along the conversation normally, if that's okay. And the first thing I want to ask you is give us a little introduction on how we got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us your origin story of what led you to get on this path of art in your life.
Yeah, most definitely. To be real with you, I didn't really have a choice. I've been drawing ever since I think my mom told me I was like 2 years old. I picked up a pencil. It's like the only thing I've ever been good at or, been able to do really. So it kind of chose me. Yeah, I've always been like drawing, painting, sculpting. Like I said, from the time I was 2 years old, getting into all the art classes, going through high school like that. And my very favorite medium was film and television. Yeah, being able to blend, practical effects, visual effects with live action footage or animation has always really appealed to me. So, yeah, I figured that I would either go bust or go big. And so I was looking into schools to try to facilitate, this artistic career that I wanted. And I saw that there was one of the best trade schools in Hollywood called the Noman School of Visual Effects. So yeah, I was saving up money since I was 14. I was working at like a fast food restaurant basically, and I saved up enough money to afford 1 year of school out in Hollywood. So yeah, I lived like super broke and did my first year of school, quickly realized that I would need a lot more schooling to be able to compete and actually get into the film industry. So I made a deal with my parents where if I stayed out of jail and got straight A's, they would help me afford we afforded basically about another year and a half of school. So I kept taking those classes and yeah, that's where I got into ZBrush. I learned 2D, 3D, put all those things together. Yeah, started applying, sending out my portfolio to different studios, and yeah, shortly after I ran out of money going for school, I was picked up by a company called Gentle Giant, where I was sculpting for collectibles and miniatures, toys, things like that, using ZBrush full time. That was my first job out of school, and yeah, then I started working in film, television. I started getting contracts as a concept artist, which is what I learned that I really love to do because that's, an environment where you could just try out as many ideas as possible and iterate on those ideas. And yeah, ever since then, I've been working in film, television. I've just gotten into fashion. I always try to stay like up to date on the latest technological trends and how those are, influencing the arts, and tried to work on as many challenging projects as possible, always expanding my skill set. And yeah, we could talk a lot more about all those different kind of moves along the way. But yeah, that's kind of the quick version of how I became a digital artist.
All right, awesome. So basically what I'm hearing is you didn't go to actually college, but during your teen years while you were in high school, you've been just saving money, trying to get as much education as you can, and you just got your foot in the door in the industry, through this that school that you just paid. Your parents also helped you to pay for it, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm very fortunate that way. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. And so the next thing that comes to my mind right now is was there any doubts along the way that maybe this is the right path, or maybe you should just go for a safer path or something, in terms of job or anything, or where you just had that passion and hopefulness that everything will work out eventually? Because anxiety is especially about money and future, is very common, especially for everyone, I assume. So I was wondering, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, damn, that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that before. Yes and no. I mean, on one hand, I kind of knew that I couldn't really do anything else. So it was kind of like I have to get really good at this and be able to compete, with some of the best in the world, or I'm not going to be able to do anything. I really don't even know what a plan B would have been. Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely have an anxiety, right? I am an artist. I'm sure we all, have that nagging doubt in the back of our heads. But that was always kind of tempered by the realization that I didn't really have any other options. So here we are. I don't know how useful that is for the audience, but yeah, that's what brought me here.
All right, so let's go back to the make for a sec. So what is the story behind it, like in terms of design and everything?
Oh man, I don't know that it's even that deep. Like I said, this was more like of a relaxing piece. Man, I didn't even sort out like how the how that like actuators would like move the arms or anything like that. So it's kind of a nonsensical piece. But yeah, essentially like I just ZBrush is like really phenomenal at doing like these kind of sculptural like hard surface pieces where they're kind of like in between hard surface and organic. And yeah, it's like super relaxing. You just get like a couple of these brushes. I love like the H polish brush where you can just start like making really nice like planar shapes like this. And man, just like listening to a good podcast, very similar to this. And yeah, just making shapes until you're, ready to go to sleep basically.
All right. Yeah, I've always wanted to, get good with that as well. And tell us a little bit about your process. Like, what does the structure of your pipeline look like whenever you want to start working on a new piece or a project, basically? I mean, I'm sure like this is a personal project, so of course your workflow for professional work is different than personal work, or I don't know, maybe they're same. But walk us through a little bit about your process. Basically, what does a structure of a pipeline look like? What steps are they consist of?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely going to vary project to project. Like I said, something like this is a lot more just a personal piece for my own relaxation. So I'm literally just starting with a primitive sphere in ZBrush, and then literally just like using the move brush and just pushing and pulling shapes around until I kind of have, what I'm feeling in my mind. And then just slowly, like I said, like chipping away the planes, like actually getting into the sculpting, start dragging out some alphas until I have like something interesting. And it's really just, I guess you'd say like a pure creative workflow where there's no right or wrong. I'm not trying to please a client. I'm not trying to, hit a specific reference or anything like that. So this is a lot more of just like the enjoyable relaxation workflow. But obviously, if I'm on a project that's for a client, I'm going to be much more precise, do a lot more research, really think things through, try to think things in a very systematic manner. Obviously, like I said, it's going to depend project to project, but more often than not, a kind of general outline is like doing a ton of research, putting together reference boards, reading the script, getting a good understanding of what your client wants and, the kind of mood and attitude or, technical specs that it needs to hit. Once you have that, you're going to start sketching, iterating on those sketches, finding all those moves, being very precise in what those moves are, presenting it to the client, getting feedback, and then building the final piece based on what those sketches come together as. Yeah, a little bit about the process.
All right. And of course, there's also something else I want to ask. Like, in the introduction, I mentioned you're a digital artist in film, TV, fashion. But I'm kind of curious about something. Have you worked on game projects before as well?
Only a little bit.
Oh.
I really want to get into games more. I'm not a video gamer myself. I haven't played like a video game since like high school, maybe even earlier. It's like I'd rather be making it than like consuming it, I guess. But that being said, I've had like roommates in the past who would play like video games while I'm like working, and it turned me on to the potential that they have for like immersion and storytelling. And now that the graphics are like, unbelievably good. Yeah, I'm like really wanting to get onto a game project. I just haven't had like the right opportunity come at the right time. That being said, though, I did contribute a couple pieces of concept art to Halo 5. I did a little bit of character designing very, very briefly. So that was really cool to do. That was very early on in my career. And then a couple years ago, I was one of the founders and art directors of an NFT company up in Canada, and they were building a game project that was based on their NFTs. So that was very cool to be able to kind of art direct this entire metaverse and, focus on not only the characters, which is my specialty, but, how they interacted with the gameplay, the storytelling, the environments, things like that. So yeah, fingers crossed I get more opportunities soon in the future.
All right. And so here's the thing. Let's say like this mech right now is being prepared for film or a game as well. So basically what different steps would you take if you wanted to prepare this for animation or film, or if it's gonna get prepared for game, like as a game ready character and asset, what different steps would you take? How would the pipelines differ?
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, in either case, to be real with you, I'm going to make the sculpture and I'm going to pass it off to my super talented character team and let them handle all the technical things. But no, I would say they're fairly similar pipelines. Wow, both my colleagues in film and games are going to hate me for that one. But essentially, you start with a sculpt and you're not too worried about any of the technical specs for it. But then given the technical ramifications of the engine that you're going to be bringing the character into, or the film pipeline, then you're going to start really considering things like topology or the rig or polygon count, things like that. So yeah, it starts here. You get a 3D asset going, you get all the design figured out. If you're good, you're going to take into consideration some of those technical things early on. That way when you're handing off the let's say concept sculpture to the modeling team, they don't totally hate you. But yeah, that's how I'd start that pipeline.
All right. And here's the thing. I mentioned that you're a digital artist, but at the same time, when anyone takes a look at your portfolio, there's mostly characters. So I mean, we kind of had this talk before we started the podcast. But how do you actually define yourself right now as an artist? Like, I'm sure you mentioned digital artist, but what is your main specialty? Like, that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely my specialty is characters, costumes, creatures, props, maybe I'd say. But usually I use the term digital artist just because it's all encompassing, because it's hard to say, oftentimes I'm drawing, painting, sculpting, retopologizing, 3D modeling, illustrating, all of those things kind of come together. So yeah, concept artist, 3D artist, something along those lines.
All right. So here's the thing. Speaking of, your experiences in the past, I also wanted to ask this. What was the first art job paycheck you ever got? What was it for? And, how do you feel at the time when you got it? Like,
Oh, man. Well, very first would have been something like elementary school or something, selling comic books to my classmates, things like that. And obviously it's not only is it gratifying, but it's like you feel honored, that someone actually wants to spend economic energy on your ideas, your output. So like, it's always an incredible feeling. I hopefully will never take it for granted. But yeah, the first job I got, actually in the industry, I was like finishing up classes at school. I was near the kind of end of my schooling, or more accurately, almost out of money. And there were a couple like indie movies that were being made. And like I said, I was sending my portfolio out to, literally anyone that had a project that needed some concept art. And so there were these random indie movies that I don't think are even got finished, or I couldn't even tell you where they are today. And they were like less than minimum wage and just needed some kind of costume and creature designs. So that was kind of that first opportunity there.
That's awesome, man. And all right, so let's walk me through a little bit of what did you exactly do on this mech, like about the devices that's on it, like the design of it, basically.
Man, well, damn, we should have brought up a job that had a little bit more thought put into it than this. Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm trying to find like some interesting kind of shapes that like have some semblance of like aggression and just like a touch of like anatomy to it. Bringing those together into like a hard surface kind of creature. But you could see like I'm not even like considering like how the joints work or like how the weaponry works or anything like that. It's like purely driven by like how cool I can make the silhouette or how that kind of, like I said, aggression I could get into the silhouette. Yeah. Maybe we want to bring up like something more from like my ArtStation portfolio and talk more like, something that has a bit more thought put into it than just like a relaxing piece.
Sure, definitely. And
Yeah. What do you think? Should I hop on that on my screen or do you want to pull that up or what do you think would be best?
I think you can stop your share screen now and hop on that again and prepare the files, and you can start your share screen. I mean, that should be fine on the recording. And for anyone who's listening, by the way, you should definitely hop on YouTube and watch this episode on YouTube because you're missing out on a lot of cool stuff right now. If you're listening on it, just Spotify or Castbox or something. And there's something else I wanted to ask as well, which is, what are some of your favorite video games that you've been following or want to play, but don't have the time? Because I know you mentioned that the last video games you played were like, from your high school times, I guess.
Oh yeah, like a long time ago. Man, I'd have to think about that for a second. Help me out. Okay, what would you recommend? What should I look into first?
What do you like? What genre do you like? What type of games do you like?
I couldn't even tell you. Genre wise, I mean, I love the first thing that came to mind was The Last of Us. I saw a roommate of mine playing that, and I think that must have been back in like 2013, 2014. And that's when it clicked to me that a game wasn't just you're doing a task and racking up points. It's that it can be like an immersive emotional experience, maybe even more so than watching a film because you're
absolutely.
Yeah, that's when it clicked. So I think if I was to actually sit down and like go through a game, which by the way, I can't even watch a movie. It's not that I'm against the medium of video games. I don't have an attention span. I need to be like creating constantly. So I have nothing against games. I can't even watch movies. But yeah, if I was to like sit down and go through that experience, the first thing that comes to mind is The Last of Us. What do you think? Have you played it?
Actually, there's some franchises that I've never played, but they're all on my list, and I'm kind of missed. Like one of them is Last of Us, one of them is God of War, one of them is Uncharted. Like basically most PlayStation is exclusive, but I don't think Last of Us is actually PlayStation exclusive, by the way. But yeah, these games I've never played. But I've heard a lot of great things about Last of Us from everyone, but I haven't played. And I know a lot of people will hate him, but just from a hindsight look at it, I mean, it's just zombies, and some emotional writing, I guess. I don't know. That's it. I know a lot of people will hate the movie or maybe dislike this episode because of this, but I don't really get. I know it's a hot take. I know, like I kind of don't get a lot of things. Like I don't even understand the hype behind the Star Wars. Like I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. There's some really cool iconic design about it. I know you're going to hate me as well right now from the reaction.
I'm gonna hate you right now.
Exactly. I mean, that's fine, man. But like, I mean, it's just good guys versus bad guys. Add lightsaber. Bada bing, bada boom. That's it.
Okay, what's one that like you do hold in really high regard?
All right, I get it.
Film or games, I should say.
All right, but before I say that, let me just quickly say this. I like stories that sometimes are absurd, right? Like there was this indie game recently that I played. It was kind of called Pizza Tower, and it's so ridiculous and funny. The whole premise is there's a guy who, likes pizzas, right? And he has a pizzeria and he's going broke, right?
Wait,
Pizza Tower.
Tower?
Yeah. And apparently his whole business is gonna go to ruins because some evil, I think, monster thingy stole his stuff. And he got so angry, and the whole premise of the game is we should run through and smash everything to get to the top of the tower. And that's it. It's simple, but it's really funny and ridiculous. Or maybe that was necessarily not. I don't think this is of course comparable to something like Last of Us or Servers.
I was gonna say.
The point is, listen. The point is that I don't necessarily like the story shouldn't take itself seriously sometimes for me. I like to be entertained sometimes, right?
Mm.
Not educated on like something. But if I have to say something serious, like something that I really love and I think has really good writing, Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, Fallout New Vegas, right? Didn't
Specifically New Vegas one. They're writing
do a show of that specifically.
Not for New Vegas, but Amazon, I think, is making a Fallout show right now.
Yeah. That's something else I really love the idea of, is that, these games have like such a cultural impact, especially on millennials, and now that they're like adapting them for the screen. Like one thing I think is really cool, I haven't seen it, but obviously I love the design, is the Halo series. I think just looks brilliant, and all the risks that the developers took in that original Halo game, which I have played, by the way, like way back in high school. But yeah, they took so many risks in that so that it really stood apart, as, it wasn't just like some generic sci-fi. And yeah, how they translated that to live action, I thought all of that was absolutely brilliant. So that's a really interesting way that there's kind of this through line from game to the big screen that I really appreciate as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even though I said that about Star Wars, but the things I love about and I like about Star Wars is not the actual story or the writing, So for me, like, when I was a kid, there was this video game called Star Wars Rogue Squadron, and it was like a spaceship fighting game. It was an old game, and it had some really interesting, mechanics for its time. I think it was in 1998 or something. Yes, this thing. Oh, I loved this when I was a kid. And the robots, the spaceships, I loved all of this about Star Wars. Like this, don't get me wrong. That was my criticism of the plot of the Star Wars mostly, not necessarily like the whole thing. But like the TIE fighters, the X-Wings, like I love those stuff, to be honest. And let me see. What other thing I wanted to say that's also really worth, checking out.
Yeah, I need recommendations, because if I'm ever going to work on a video game, I feel like...
Guardians of the Galaxy game 2021.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's by 2021. By the way, for anyone who's listening, as I mentioned, we're showing everything we're talking about on the screen right now on YouTube. So you better, you want to enjoy the episode fully, check out YouTube version.
Yeah, for anyone that needs some new video game recommendations. Okay.
So yeah, this game, listen, I'm just going to say, imagine you're watching a really well-written, fun, entertaining movie, but you control the characters. That's the best way to describe it.
Man, yeah, that's like the perfect pitch for me, because like Guardians of the Galaxy is like brilliant character design.
I love
it's like they're so absurd, but they made it so grounded and emotional. It's honestly, it might be some of the best character design of the last decade.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the thing is, there are choices in the game that from the beginning of the game, it's going to affect certain things in the future, like, end chapters of the game. So I love about that your actions have consequences in that game in a certain way. Even there are decisions in the game during when you want to proceed through some levels that you need to do some things that might make some characters like you, some characters hate you. And based on, there's some certain, scenarios, if a character loves you, he might do something to help you, and the story might proceed somewhere else. But if he hates you and you always pick the option that's going to piss that person off, he's gonna just do some crazy thing, and the story might proceed somehow different. So I love this stuff about it. The writing of it is good. It's like 17-18 hours of gameplay and the story mode. So it's a juicy game, honestly.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, that's like the trends that I want to see continue in games, and that's gonna get someone like me more excited, is when the one kind of thing missing, maybe not missing is the wrong way to phrase it, but one thing that a film or a television show lacks is that experiential part. The viewer doesn't get to influence how the story goes, and when you bring in that element to the experience, it's real life, right? Like that is the human experience. So yeah, that I think definitely is going to be like, yeah, the number one trend in the future for games, if I had to make a prediction.
Yeah, like I honestly like stories. Like actually, stories is such a fun topic to talk about. Like, for example, one type of a story trope that I like is, just imagine this, right? I'm just going to make this up. Imagine you're a character that, like a small child, in a city, like it's a sci-fi setting, and your mom tells you to go get some cheese from the market, and while you're back, get some apples. And all right, that's how the story starts. So it's just another casual day. You go, there's some, troops coming back from some exploration back to the city you're in, and you go watch them along the way. But then something happens, and you suddenly find yourself in the middle of all these troops on another deployment, and they find you, and the story you just enter this plot unintentionally in a weird accidental way, and you embark on this weird journey and everything that's happened. So it's completely like fluid and organic in a sense. It's not like I'm the good guy, I'm going on a crusade to kill the bad guy and I have a lightsaber. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's
No, I think you're right. One of the most poignant trends in television over the last decade is the ability to write characters that are not black or white, but they're thoroughly in the gray zone, right? Like all the very best television over the last decade has, been encompassed by characters who are more human than they are stereotypical tropes.
Or what other trope I really like is, for example, imagine it's a very basic trope in writing that I've seen, in a lot of video games and movies, but it's like a tournament, like a competition. At the end prize is a certain, like an end goal is the winner gets a certain prize, and every single contestant has a certain motivation for that thing. I really like that kind of trope. Like for me, one of the plot of a little indie game I'm trying to, working on the concept at the ideation phase right now is that it's like a sci-fi solar punk setting, and it's a racing game basically, right? And the prize is a scrapped engine of a very famous, crashed space shuttle. That's the prize of the tournament, of the racing. And everyone has their own ambition, why they want that. Someone wants it to use for furnace for his dad's restaurant to heat up the barbecues of the whole, complex. Someone wants it to, fly back to the moon of, his lost, brother, long, brother or family or something. So I like the stories like this. Like, it's not like it's not always a bad versus good. It doesn't have to be like that. Like, the stories can be interesting. The stories can be, like, I don't know. Sometimes you need to get immersed into something different. I don't know how to say it. Like, honestly, express what I'm trying to say. I hope you understand what I'm saying, right?
No, I think so, yeah. It's like in real life, almost never do you find... Okay, maybe this is kind of unfair, but almost never do you find people's motivation stemming from wanting to do good or wanting to do bad. Usually there's like a very complex constellation of motivations that have to do with, everything from how they feel in the moment to economic choices and how all of those things are like interacting and playing with each other like moment to moment. So the more that our storytelling encompasses that, I think the more rich, not only designs that you're going to get, which is obviously the facet of storytelling that I'm most interested in, but also the more depth of experience you're going to get for all the viewers.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there isn't, I mentioned the thing about the Star Wars because you see that in a lot of media, and at some point it gets kind of tiring, to be honest. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, first time it was like, of course, because it didn't have any other things to compare itself to a lot. It was a huge thing. I understand that. And I mean, I completely understand why it has a huge fan base. And I also understand why a lot of those original fan base hates the new sequels as well. And honestly, it has a lot of potential, the whole Star Wars franchise. Like, I mean, it can be more than just, good versus bad every time. Like, it can actually go into deeper motivations for each side. Maybe there's someone who joined, for example, the dark side or something, for his own, to get to his or her goals, but then realizes, oh, maybe I don't want to be associated with this, psychopaths, gets out, but at the same time doesn't join, why there's no in middle faction? Is there anything like that? Please enlighten me, for anyone who's also listening. There should be a in between faction, like a neutral anti-hero faction in the Star Wars. If someone makes a case like that, I actually would be really into it.
I know.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm like a huge Star Wars fan, but like almost purely from the aesthetic of it. I mean, I was raised on Star Wars, right? So I've seen like the first 6 movies, but I haven't seen anything past them. I just love how it looks. But there's got to be that middle in between. It's too bad we don't have a live audience. They could chime in with some factions in between. Probably like Boba Fett, like the bounty hunters.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, I should be more of a nerd with this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not really up to date with the lore of the Star Wars, but the thing that is really dear to my heart with the Star Wars is when I was a kid, there was some games, not just the Rogue Squadron one, there was another demo of a level, because in late 90s, in the 90s or early 2000s, I don't know if you remember the games back then, they had demos. This studio who publishes the game has a demo of their future games or trailers of their future games in the game as well, because there was an internet back then, so that's how they would promote their future products. I think it wasn't the Rogue Squadron CD we had. There was like a demo of another third-person R2D2 C3PO controlled robot game, which you had to collect gears, bring them somewhere else. It was like one of those old late 90s, collect item, bring it somewhere, unlock an area, and go there. Kind of those games. Do you remember those?
No, I don't remember.
Oh.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and and as a kid, I loved robots. By the way. I absolutely loved robots and anything hard service. And that was the reason I got into mechanical engineering first, but I dropped out at the first semester after I realized there's so much math I need to learn. So I was like, fuck this shit. Jesus. I like the art part. I don't want, like no one was there to tell me, you like art. You don't like the actual thing. You just like the art.
God.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely relate to that. I couldn't do the mathematics to save my life, but I'll make it cool looking.
Yeah, exactly. I'll make it cool looking, and someone else, figure out the fucking math and things back end of it as well. Like, I don't want to deal with that stuff, honestly.
Exactly. Collaboration.
All right. So are we going to start with another project you mentioned on ZBrush?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have like anything prepared that we could dive into.
Yeah, we can just go with this.
I could pull up I have my art station up, and like
Sure.
if there was anything specifically that like, you or your audience, especially if you think there's anything that your audience could get some value out of, I'm happy to talk about anything that's here published.
All right. No, actually, I would be more interested in the stuff you want to actually talk about right now. Like the things that you actually, I think, would be good conversation. Like, for example, yeah, we can start with the recent series of works you've been doing. I think Argus is the other. That was the name of it, right?
Yeah. I've finally been able to kind of finish it up and finish up this whole kind of collection I've been building. But yeah, over the past year, essentially, I've kind of been taking the past year off to focus on artificial intelligence again and figure out how that can apply not only to an artistic workflow, but also how that's going to shape and change the role of a concept artist or a designer. We could get into that a little bit later, but while going through that, I always need a personal project to be working on at the same time, where I can kind of test out these ideas. But then also, I always need something that I'm working on just personally for myself, to feed my soul, so to speak. So yeah, over the past year, I've been designing this collection of conceptual fashion pieces that I've been calling the Daughter of Argus collection. And essentially it's a lot of these characters here in red, where I'm kind of bringing together a lot of elements of like street style, elevated avant-garde fashion. I'm very influenced by like Alexander McQueen, and kind of bringing that together with some form language that I don't think I've ever seen before pulled together. So I'm pulling from influences like different insects, Egyptian or ancient Egyptian cultures, a lot of gold jewelry, patterning, things like that, and trying to bring it into something fresh that you could only see if you were to combine not only real fashion, but you would need things like 3D printing, makeup effects, visual effects to see it fully realized. So yeah, it's been a process to kind of help me figure out how to bring AI into a drawing and painting workflow, but then also to express some ideas that I've had in my head for the past few years. So yeah, I'll show you a couple pieces here from it. So yeah, lots of like different logo patterning design, trying to come up with things that are like pulling from silhouettes that are very classic to like streetwear scenes, but then also kind of updating them with how would you say it, silhouettes that are like from ancient deities of various mythologies. Even the name of the series influenced by that. And very high-end couture armors, things like that. I'm also trying to go like very post-humanist. There's a lot of obsession, especially in the world of film, about like race, ethnicity, age, things like that. I'm trying to approach the kind of what I view as like the next frontier of that conversation, which is if we all can express our identities in the virtual world however we want, will people even choose to be human anymore? Someone like you and me would probably try to express ourselves as, giant mechs or something like that, which is super cool. And as we continue to leverage new technologies, it's going to give every single human being, regardless of artistic skill set, the ability to express themselves in these various ways. So I think that's a really interesting trend that we're continuing to explore. So I wanted to start putting things like that out there. All these characters, they have like third eyes, they're a blend of different ethnicities. I'm playing with things like different materials for like the skins. So lots of ideas coming together, lots of different technologies coming together. But this is one of the major projects that I've been working on and off over the past year. Daughter of Argus.
That's actually such an interesting topic you mentioned. The whole thing about, how would you represent yourself in a virtual world, and that kind of, as an extension is like, if someone, represent themselves in a virtual world like that, you might say, oh, maybe that's for fun representing themselves like that, but at the same time, that's kind of brings up the question that, if the technology gets to a point that we can do any modifications that we can do in the virtual world in real life, that's also like a very interesting topic, actually.
I completely agree. Even think about, for better or for worse, right now, I think especially with the generation that's a little bit younger than you and I, think about how many of them will only put imagery or video of themselves out into the world that has been edited. And obviously there's a lot of downside to this. I think there's a variety of psychological issues that are coming with that. But I also think that it's a new frontier for self-expression. And I think a lot of positives come with that as well. So I completely agree. It's an extremely interesting area right now. Along the lines of that, another cool project that I've been working on over the past year is a collaboration with the digital apparel company called Apparel Intelligence. And they're in LA. They have a variety of clients that they produce virtual apparel for. And we're getting into the idea of virtual identity that goes beyond just fashion expression. And so I've been collaborating with them to design their flagship virtual avatar. Her name's Xandra. And trying to come up with ways where she pulls on various aesthetics that are native to humans, right? So a lot of her proportions are like very classical beauty. But then there's a lot of things that are like taking risks and are very expressively native to the digital world. So like, her galactic freckles, the color of her skin, the color of her eyes, things like that. So a lot of interesting melding of ideas here. So this is an ongoing collaboration. You can expect to see a lot more coming from her. But these are also some explorations into not only character design, but character animation using artificial intelligence as well. So a lot of cool things happening there.
Yeah, like actually about the AI, I had a question. How do you specifically use it in your workflow? Like, do you take a bunch of your artworks and feed it to whatever AI model you were using, or is it just you use the AI model by default with the database it has?
Yeah, it's a big topic, right? So I know
a big topic. That's an understatement, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very controversial topic. I understand why. I think that there was a moment in time, and perhaps there'll be many more moments, where these large tech companies did do something very unethical, and that is, without permission and without royalty payments, take all of our collective artwork and train data sets on it so that it could be just as good as we are, and oftentimes better than we are, and obviously much faster than we are. That being said, though, it also did something incredible for us, which is there are a variety of open source models. My very favorite company that produces an open source model is Stability AI, which produces Stable Diffusion, which is the artificial intelligence that I would recommend for artists because it's open source. Anyone has access to it, and you're not funding one of these giant tech companies. Yeah. They have also, in a way, leveraged the playing field where you no longer need the requisite, 10, 20, 30,000 hours to be able to produce what is in your head. So that can free up a lot of time for creative individuals who, might not have that requisite time to be a good draft person or a good sculptor or something like that, but still enable them to compete with big businesses and bring their ideas to life. So like all technologies, I think there's a good and a bad side to it. And I view it as my role to figure out a way to get this technology to empower artists instead of taking something away from us, because obviously it's taking jobs, it's putting a lot of people at risk in their positions. And there's definitely a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the creative industries right now. So in my view, the only way that we can fight against it is to either continue to become so damn good that artificial intelligence can't touch you. There's a variety of artists and art styles and ways of thinking that I think AI will not be able to compete with. Or you have to figure out a way to adopt it to your particular work style so that you can become even more developed as an artist. And that's kind of the path that I'm taking. So that's kind of the preamble. More specifically, you asked about the ways that I'm using it. There's a variety of ways that I've been using it. Like I said, there's character animation, which is something that I've been interested in since 2019. I helped found a startup company in Los Angeles where we were focused on character animation using AI, and basically trying to elevate traditional 3D workflows by creating the character in 3D, rigging the character, and then animating that character into a data set where basically you have all of the facial expressions, all of the angles, all the different camera depths, all the different lighting environments of a character. You get that trained into one data set. And then you can have an actor, act out a scene and then have the artificial intelligence essentially superimpose that character with a high degree of accuracy on top of the actor and maintain a how would you say it, a much more personal and soulful performance than what you can get traditionally with 3D. I still think that this is going to be basically the workflow of the future for character animation. And so I think that it's very important for artists to learn how to implement this and get this into their work. That's the there's like a lot of things I want to say about it, but yeah, that's like the main workflow for character animation is basically being able to control a character 360 degrees in 3D, bring that into the artificial intelligence, and then use that as a way to output animations and get much more soulful performance. And then the other main way, I think, is through concept design. So traditionally, if I'm designing, let's say, a character for a film, I need to put a lot of time into, let's just say, constructing the anatomy of the body, rendering the lighting, all the kind of technical things that bring an illustration together. And as important and foundational as that is to developing your artistic eye and to fleshing out the pipeline, it does take away, minute by minute, the actual process of designing. And that's truly what someone like me is getting paid to do. You're getting paid for my eye for design. And so the more minutes I have to put into, constructing my anatomy perfectly is less time that I'm actually putting into the designing. And so essentially what I've been working on is training my own models on top of my artwork, so that the output can be as ethical as possible, and I'm not training on other people's work, right? But so that I can basically art direct the artificial intelligence by giving it my illustrations and sketchings, and basically having a back and forth conversation with my artificial intelligence model, art directing it, going back and forth between Photoshop or ZBrush or whatever the output is, bringing the generative input back into that workflow, and using that as a way to speed up and enhance that design process, and hopefully making myself a more competitive artist in the process. Yeah, a lot there.
All right, awesome. Like, actually, yes. I mean, there's really interesting topics to talk about to expand on the subject, but just to summarize, everything. It's gonna be an amazing tool, obviously, like 100%. Like, no one's denying that. But yeah, I'm just worried about the future, and not just for art. It's like even it's funny, kind of, you mentioned that the agency you're working with, there's right now a lot of agencies right now, fashion agencies are using 3D models, and there are a lot of jobs are doing this for models are getting lesser and lesser. There are now people actually, like, aside from that, who are making 3D avatars and 3D models and characters, AI characters, like the AI pretty girls, and they gain and they make Instagram profiles for it, and they have 400,000 followers or something. And I'm like, even models or just people in that industry don't even are getting their jobs taken away by the AI. It's not just artists or programmers. It's at the same time, is like, are we listen? I actually have a question in your opinion. Are we actually going to the direction of a full-on dystopia, or are we going into a dystopia but at the same time have universal basic income? Because listen, a lot of jobs can be done by AI. Honestly, I'm gonna say it, in terms of production, like in the next couple of decades, the speed that AI is going, definitely. But at the same time, I think when it comes to creativity, it's a very specific niche, topic. It's not like other stuff. And I'm not saying this to cope or make myself or anyone else who's listening to this feel special. But the thing with creativity is AI can come up with stuff based on the data it has been fed on. Same with humans. But who makes that original initial data? Humans. So the human creativity there should be a spark of human creativity first for the AI to be able to do something. I mean, you could make that same argument for programming and other stuff as well. But creativity is, creativity, of course, is this thing that's also is involved in other aspects of crafts as well. But especially when it comes to making a compelling piece of art that can make you feel something, touch your soul in a sense, kind of be genuine. I honestly don't think AI can do that. And I'm not saying this to cope or say, oh, I hate machines or something like that. Listen, if a machine could do that, I'm going to be saying, hell yeah. But don't get me wrong. There are some cool things with one of the cool trends I like in AI art is that when it started, I think 2 years ago or a year ago, there was this series of videos on YouTube, for example, Dark Souls in an 80s horror series style or something like that, or Simpsons in that style, or I don't know, anything in that style. Not just 80s horror, just anything like a 90s Eastern European cop drama characters or something like that in that style. And those are interesting, at the same time. It's like you can quickly produce it, but I think at the end of the day, it could be a good thing to speed up the production pipeline. But hear me out. Production pipeline, that's a very specific thing I'm using, because I don't think AI can honestly, listen, if you're gonna make something, a world building project or a personal piece, I think it should be as pure as possible. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Don't get me wrong, sometimes there's this exercise I've seen someone do, and I think I've done it myself by accident one time. I would take a smudge brush or a weird brush I had on Photoshop, and I just smudged it quickly, in a piece of canvas, just 40 different times, and I get these weird abstract shapes. And I would take that abstract shapes and I try to visualize something in that chaotic pattern, right? And I just try to come up with a line drawing out of that, kind of like that. So AI in that sense could be really useful, sure, but in terms of production, to get a base to sort of your ideas, but when it comes to making something really genuine, and I think human AI can never do that when it comes to art. And that's not a weird sentimental thing I'm making. That is like fact in my opinion, you know? What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's a lot to touch on there, man. This is a huge conversation. Okay, let me ask you, genuinely, you've never been like scrolling through social media, Instagram, ArtStation, and you see like a piece of art that's fucking awesome, and then you scroll a bit further down and you're like, oh, made in Midjourney, but it
Oh, yeah.
touched. So you have seen AI art that had a soul, so to speak, right?
In a sense, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I want to ask on that because like the better the machines have gotten, the more soul I think they can output because they're trained on humanity. I keep using the word soul. I know that's a bit nebulous, but what I'm really trying to say here is that they are able to elicit an emotional reaction. And so I kind of think I disagree with you, actually. I think that really what's going to happen is that the AIs, if they're just spitting out nonsense, just generating, I think that's when it's going to feel empty. And I think we've all been absolutely inundated with that work. I call it like fast food artwork, where there's no spark of emotionality to it. But then what happens is you get someone who is creative, and I don't even necessarily mean that visually, but I mean someone who can tell stories, or someone who knows how to, compose color in a way that's emotional, or, knows how to craft a good song and needs something visual from it. And if that person can leverage the I think that that's when you can still get those moments of humanity, even though it was output by a machine or just a prompt. And to be even more controversial, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that's actually really incredible. Because I've now had the opportunity to work with such a wide variety of creative individuals who were creative in ways that were not visual. Say musicians, say script writers, say entrepreneurs, even developers, right? All of these have very specific types of creativity. And so giving them the ability to implement visual expression with their version of creativity, I think is actually awesome. So yeah. That's kind of the first thing, just based on everything that you talked about. And then the second thing I wanted to touch on was, you mentioned, or you asked, are we heading towards dystopia?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so. And I think for any artists who are listening to this, who maybe are getting scared about what the future holds for creatives, first consider it's always been rough as a creative, right? I mean, the starving artist is a trope for real. But my 2 cents is I actually think it's the opposite. I think that right now, because there is so much uncertainty in how technology will impact our, let's just say, collective storytelling, I think that there is a lot of uncertainty and warranted fear. And I think there are a squeeze for jobs. And I think that the roles of various artists continue to morph and change. Very similar to how I described concept art a few minutes ago, where, traditionally a concept artist would spend several days doing a pencil sketch, and that would be the deliverable that you give to a director. Versus now, when I do a concept for a director, man, they want to see photorealism. They want to see like the character in an environment. They want to see it from multiple angles. They want to have a 3D asset that comes with it. Like, the role of concept art has evolved a great deal in the last decade. It's going to continue to evolve. My prediction is that concept artists will basically be delivering mini movies within the next decade. And I actually think that's really, really cool. I think that's going to be incredible output. And I think that for every, put it this way, there will be another opportunity for that role to evolve into something else. So we might not count it among the same jobs, but we're going to see people filling new types of roles and new types of niches. And the very last thing to that, to further support my claim that we're not headed to a dystopia, it's actually the opposite, is that, like you said, let's just say there's an AI model, right? And she gets 1 million followers on Instagram or whatever. Just because there's one additional model in the world doesn't mean that took away a position of another model. What that means is that more and more audience was built to support this many models. And as the entire population of the globe becomes richer, has more free time to engage in creative activities, and more importantly, consuming creative output, there will be more and more audiences that all creatives can find. And your podcast is a testament to this, right? Imagine you were trying to launch a show a decade ago. You would have a much smaller audience to pull from than you do now. So even though there's more and more podcasts nowadays that maybe are taking your job, you have more and more audience to engage with. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about all these things. I think that we're actually going into kind of a new creative revolution. I think that it's an amazing time to be an artist, and I think that it's a very cool opportunity to learn how to be a visual creator.
Those were exactly some interesting points, but I think to summarize everything you said and also what I said is, at the end of the day, AI can be a very amazing tool for production, as I mentioned. But at the same time, there's this worry that, all right, for example, as you mentioned, imagine right now in a studio, there's 5 people working in for example, concept team, right? There's a senior, there's, 2 juniors and 3, mid-level artists, right? And with different positions, of course. Then right now, the company can lay off 100 people, and out of these 100 people, 3 of them are from this team. And right now, for example, the art lead can just write the prompts and give for example, the other artists to just draw upon this basis. And this might be good for production, but I think at the end of the day, if you let, decisions like this affect actually, our day-to-day lives, I think it can have a really bad and destructive effect on the human psyche as a general, as a society. And I know this might sound mumbo jumbo a bit, because this is not art related. This is kind of like pop psychology. And I mentioned pop psychology because I'm not an actual psychologist, and I just want to mention that. I know, but this is just my 2 cents. Because I think, as the world is going, moving forward, I think the world is getting more isolated, even though we're more connected more than any time, any period of history, which is kind of ironic. I think we're getting more isolated, more tribalistic, more individualistic, not in the good way, in a bad way. And I think, the last thing we need is have AI companions replace actual humans. So I think that's something that should be controlled and, regulated. And it's a really tricky thing. You can't just regulate, we're just going to put a percentage on it. No, it doesn't work like that, right? So I think, at the end of the day, I think we should have more jobs for humans, and that kind of, to encourage that kind of I don't know how to it's hard to come up with words, for what I'm trying to say. But I hope that I'm kind of conveying the concept that I'm going with, right?
Yeah.
And definitely, right now there are rise of AI girlfriends, which is really scary at the same time. That how the world, there's a actual demand for something like that.
Right.
And stuff like that is crazy. And as I said before we started the podcast, it's beyond losing a job or money. It's a cultural that's going on with the AI thing. And yeah, I just as you mentioned, whatever you mentioned I kind of agree with them as well, except from the the fact that AI art could also produce an artwork as soulful as, I don't know, an actual artist who puts his heart or her heart and soul into a piece. I've never I've seen really cool artwork with AI. Cool or eliciting emotion doesn't always translate into soul. And I know it's such a weird, as you said, nebulous term to talk. What is the soul thing we're talking about?
Right.
And And I get that. Like, I'm not trying to like be a hypocrite here, right? But at the same time, I exactly don't know how to describe it actually. Like, this isn't something I'm just trying to use against AI, by the way, right? Because as I said, like it can be a really amazing tool. Like to like I all right, I'm gonna say it right now, because I've said it before the podcast. I'm using it in my book as well, and it's spitting up my thing a lot. The new titles you're seeing, I'm using AI for them. And I'm not for like I shouldn't say that. Like I mean, I use a Zencaster platform for most of my episodes except this one. It has a AI transcript system, amazing. And I take the middle chunk of the transcript and I feed it to ChatGPT, and I tell ChatGPT to give me 10 YouTube video title ideas based on that. And I get really good ones. So I don't have to watch like 7, 8 YouTube videos based to learn the science of YouTube and see, which one, how to come up with a good title. There. When I wanted to start the group discussion podcast, I didn't know how to record on Discord, how to use OBS, because I knew I had to use the OBS. What I did, I was too lazy to watch an 8. I know that's kind of like a wrong part, but like I was even too lazy to watch an 8-minute tutorial on how to use OBS. But I just quickly said, "Hey, ChatGPT, I just want to record a podcast with OBS on Discord call. Could you explain how can I do that in very short steps?" And it gave me 5 steps.
Nice.
Quickly figured out. Like, see if you know like how to use it. It can be a very powerful tool in production and how to speed up your processes. But that's, I think, the big positive of it. But it has a huge negatives right now, like dragging alongside with it, in many fields. Like some things are even if it wasn't for the greed of the capitalistic our capitalistic overlords above us who just want to maximize their profits and shareholder revenue and stuff like that, some jobs and positions naturally be kind of simulated by AI, right? But I hate this trend that it's trying to devour as many jobs as possible. It's dangerous, and a lot of people actually a lot of these tech bros that you don't really particularly have a liking to, they kind of say, "Oh, you artists are being purists and elitists, and you're just trying to gatekeep art from us. Like why can't just someone who doesn't have time to train art can just make cool art?" And there was this clip of a convention I saw the other day. There was booths of people who use AI art to sell artworks, prints, and a lot of other stuff. And they say, "Oh, it's okay. A lot of people who bitch about AI art are just a bunch of mediocre artists whose arts are years behind what even the oldest model of Midjourney could make." Well, they're worried because they're putting in a lot of hours and years to actually kind of become good artists, but they can't do that because the prospect of AI taking jobs is a very, of course, naturally scary thing. And yeah, these are the problems we're dealing with. I kind of I would gladly gatekeep art from them as much as possible, because it's ridiculous to call it gatekeeping. It's like, dude, you can just learn illustration. You can watch tutorials. Sure, I'm kind of a right now because I was too lazy to watch an 8-minute tutorial and I use ChatGPT, right? But I mean that's a different topic, by the way. But you get the point that I'm going with, right? There's a lot of people who just think quick and easy and just want to have a side hustle by selling AI art. Like, I hate that capitalistic side of art a lot. You have with a passion. It's killing art. It's killing it.
No, I don't disagree with any of that. I think all of those are valid concerns. I think all of that is currently going on. And there is most certainly a downside and a dark side to the technology, for sure. I'll be very interested to see what kind of forms of regulations are going to be implemented in the future. I'm definitely interested to see what the adaptation and adoption is going to look like, especially as it relates to some of our fields. Like you said, there's definitely a phenomenon of it pushing out a lot of people from various market segments, and I think that is a catastrophe for sure. Like you brought up the example of artists at like trade shows, right? And so someone who does not have to have any skill can just input a prompt, pay a $20 fee every month, and output artwork that is going to sell because it's much more visually appealing than someone who has put in a lot more time to learn the arts, but they're not technically as good at creating that visual imagery that sits with an audience, right? I exactly have answers to some of those problems there. But the kind of hope is that just by the numbers, um, taking that specific example, the person who is the, let's just say, actual artist who is actually learning to draw, they're at a trade show, they're trying to sell, and they're situated right next to a booth that's selling AI artwork. They, even though they're have a harder time competing with the AI artwork in raw sales, they still have more opportunity to cultivate an audience that does want to spend their money with them than they ever did before in history. And in fact, it could actually be the case that because they don't use AI, they can cultivate an audience that wants to support their purely human work. I don't think that human valuation of artwork is going to go anywhere, right? Like, just because the digital camera was invented does not mean that people don't spend millions of dollars on fine art, right? So I think that there is going to be plenty of opportunity for human artists to continue to adopt to the situation, completely ignore AI, and still be able to cultivate an audience that wants to support their artwork. So yeah, I think it's still maybe a bit of a naive, hopeful outlook for the future. But I don't see human valuation of artwork going anywhere. I think, like I said, the richer we all get, the more people have more free time to engage in the arts and to consume the arts, which is the trend for all of humanity. I don't think that's going anywhere, and I think that there's still plenty of opportunity out there for creative individuals.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just one thing I just realized after all these years and times I've talked about AI, one very good use case of AI that I would say would be really cool is, imagine you would just catch off a scene from your dreams and you just feed it to ChatGPT and describe it with the prompts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That's
absolutely.
a really interesting use.
Yeah, this is really interesting that you bring that up. Let me think how much I can say about this. I have a friend who, okay, one sec. Let me think about how I should phrase this. I have a friend who suffers from a variety of mental health issues and has been going to therapy for a long time. And art therapy has always been a incredible tool for this individual. And recently they have been using just some very basic, like, I think it might have even just been the AI that like comes with Bing or Google or something like that, as a way to express some of this mental anguish. And they've told me that it's been like very, very like a cathartic experience where they're having this kind of communication and like realizing their visions, and then like printing that out and painting on top of it. And I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, that's kind of tangential to what you said, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways that people will continue to respond to various technologies that allow them to have creative output that we have yet to even consider.
One thing is for certain right now, in my opinion, that no one can afford being a normal at their craft anymore. You have to be exceptional at something. Not everything, but something. Like if you want to stand out, so you have to stand out. Like I know it's getting more competitive, and people. I'm not actually worried about that because I know if I put in the work, after I'm gonna get the results eventually if you're stubborn enough. But I think that's a lot of concern for most people when you usually underneath everything when you actually talk to people. An actual main concern is this: that they actually now have to become someone exceptional. They like it, and I don't judge people. You just want to be a normal artist or normal programmer and make a living job, have a life. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people honestly just love to have a normal life, and that's completely fine. Just have a peaceful, normal life. Like they don't want to be millionaires, and that's fine. You don't need to be millionaires to get it. You don't need to have a Lamborghini to have money. You don't need to have a lot of awards in your field to be happy. And I get that. But that's becoming a little bit harder these days. And I think that's such a, important issue as well. And as I said, before, the money thing is killing art. And it's kind of killing a lot of things as well. Because right now you don't see a lot of people who are, passionate about growth in any skills. People just like everything the easy way. I think that's the human kind of nature. In the whole history. I don't think that's anything.
Yeah, it's probably not new. Yeah.
But I think the whole thing about capitalism and the money thing is just killing it. Everything is money has become the ultimate goal. You know.
Why do you view it as killing it though? You don't actually think that it's kind of the opposite, where the more we're all enabled to engage in these markets, the more we're all able to head towards, let's say, creative output that we want to do, right? There's more art jobs now than there were 100 years ago. There's more art jobs now than there were 10 years ago, right?
Oh, 100%. And I'm not just talking about, by the way, just art. I mean, in general, in any field right now, if you see, like, you don't see someone who gets crazy about having a personal challenge for themselves and completing it. I mean, you still see some people who post their stuff on socials, but at the end of the day, it's like many people's concern is just money. And I get that. Maybe for a certain problem in their life, they need money. I need money for a lot of things. You need money for a lot of things. The person who's watching the episode, right now needs money for a lot of things, probably. But what I'm trying to say is you don't see that passion anymore in people these days, compared to, like, let's say, like 2 decades or a decade ago, for doing things, having goals or something. It's just, how can I survive?
Interesting. I kind of have to push back on you. I actually kind of see it as the opposite. I feel like I see more and more people who are able to engage in their passions than ever before, like as every year goes further. Yeah. I mean, I interact a lot with the art community, especially through things like Instagram, and like more and more people are like, I realized I want to do this. I want to support these passions. I feel like I feel like I'm witnessing the opposite trend than what you just described. You don't view that like more and more people around you are like wanting to pursue their passions than, the previous year, the year before that?
Both yes and both no at the same time. I'm not just talking about the people around me, because of course, the people you involve yourself in or your circles are different than the general population.
Mm-hmm.
General, but mostly I don't see that much fire and passion anymore. Like, I've seen a lot, like, of course, quite the instances in the people I follow, but you don't see that craziness in. You used to see that a lot in people, in the previous generations. And I'm not saying it's a generational thing, by the way. Like, don't quote me on that. I'm just saying because of how everything has been messed up in the world right now. It's like it's like in a video game. The objective is now survival. Just survive. Like,
Are you talking about like people in your personal life, or like where do you feel you're not seeing as much passion?
I mean, all over the world. Like, it's just, because of the economies all over the world has been so messed up. Like, it's hard to predict things right now. Like, the world is crazy, and you just have to. And what I mean by survive is just mostly I'm talking about the money issues, right? And I'm saying that because that kills the whole creativity part. And by creativity, I'm not just talking about art. I mean that creativity to come up with cool new things and to do, and aspirations in your personal lives. And I'm saying, and what I want to and the reason I'm just talking about this kind of like off topically, what I want to say about the AI thing, before that I couldn't really convey is that, if we go down this path for replacing every single position that we quickly can, with AI, this can exasperate, the future, in my opinion. And that should be something controlled, because right now the whole situation, I think, is a little bit out of control. And like, just look at the layoffs. I don't know if it has anything to do with AI, but
no, certainly there's a huge impact. Yeah. Especially as, studios, production companies are trying to figure out what the impact is going to be. There's definitely some hesitancy to invest in new projects, and that's certainly affecting the creative industries right now. I guess that's part of the reason, though, why I feel like I'm seeing the opposite trend of what you're describing, though, is that because I know so many people who are, in between jobs or are more engaged in the gig economy, and so have more time in between work. I feel like, it could just be because I'm a part of, the people I engage with most are artists, they are entrepreneurs, they are people who are like working in their fields. But yeah, by dint of that, I'm seeing more engagement in personal projects, in personal development, things like that, than I'm seeing them not. But again, that could just be a result of the bubbles I find myself in. Obviously, I'm like a very hopeful person about the future. So it could entirely just be that I'm, so to speak, ignoring particular parts of the population. That could be the case.
Dude, I would love your version of future come to life. Like, I have no problem with that. Like, I mean, there's this whole genre of solar punk, like, which is like about like it's kind of, I think it's kind of like, futuristic, kind of fiction where technology has integrated, like, in a synchronous way with human life and technology and advancement in a way that is kind of kind of like, holding up a way of sustainable living. Which also ecologically doesn't have a negative ecological impact. It's actually net positive for it. Like, we can actually advance everything, while not going into dystopian route, but that's the way we're heading towards, like, nose down.
You think so?
I genuinely hope I'm wrong. I'm serious. I'm genuinely hope I'm wrong. But yeah, I think that's how it's going. It's going. Honestly, this sounds a bit crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is like, it's very similar to the first part of our conversation when we talked about characters and storytelling. It's not like Star Wars. It's not black or white. It's not good or bad. It's shades of gray that morphs situation to situation. And I think that's a more accurate way to describe our current situation, is that we're not just going to go from point A to point B and now we're in the solar punk future and everything's perfect. It's going to be a long, winding road where we go backwards, we go forward, sideways, up and down. Technology takes jobs away, it creates new jobs. It's there's going to be times of economic squeezing, which, I think for a variety of sectors we're in currently. And there's going to be periods of economic growth and expansion. And yeah, it's not as straightforward and linear. But listen, my view is most definitely that humans are invested in humanity. That's what we're all working collectively towards. If the last 100, 200, 300, 400 years tells you anything about humanity, is that we do move forward. This is the most peaceful time. It's the most economically prosperous time. Try being an artist 100 years ago and supporting your family. Good luck, right? But now that's like not uncommon, right? There's plenty of job opportunities where you can completely support a family and engage in like your passions, more so than there ever has been in human history before. And even though there might be a squeeze at the moment while we're all trying to figure out what this new technology, what the impact is going to be of this new technology, I think that we have every reason to believe that this trend will continue to go forward. And it might not be the perfect solar punk output, but I think it will be close. I think humans are going to continue to rock it. Yeah.
We'll see. Honestly, I hope so. And one thing I mentioned about in the recently group discussion podcast is one of the main reasons I'm doing the podcast is I want, in my own very little minuscule way, kind of promote the fact that there are still people passionate about art. Like, art is still cool. There's hope. Don't give up. Like you don't have to think it's like a dead age of art where everything is just going down because of AI or NFTs or any weird technological things that's been happening. I just want to make a presence that artists still exist. People who love artists still exist, and there's like 280 of them till now. So, and
no, your podcast is a testament to that. Like you said, 280 artists have been able to make their visions come to life. That's incredible. There's many more of us. There's one thing I just want to throw in here real quick too. Like I said, I've taken the last year, basically off to really consider the implications of all this technology. And one thing that I've found that I continue to work on my students with is that the better I can draw, paint, and sculpt, the better my input and the better the conversation I'm having with the artificial intelligence is. So I think that there's still every reason to continue to learn the foundations of art, not only because it's going to improve your eye as a designer, but also so that you can have that conversation to get to the design solution that you're going to need. So whether that's cinematography, costume design, visual effects, the more that you have a handle on the fundamentals of your craft, the better you're going to be able to engage with new tools. So hopefully that's also a bit of a hopeful outlook for the future.
Yeah, hope. Yeah, definitely. And all right, so with all the arts talk we just mentioned, I just need to quickly, ask you something else. What are you working on right now that you can tell us about that actually? Like, or both professionally, and if you can, of course, you can share anything because of NDAs, but also your personal works. What are you working on right now? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of things. Yeah, I could tell you about a few of them. So obviously one of the big collaborations that I'm working on is with our avatar here with digital apparel company called Apparel Intelligence. We have a variety of projects going with them right now. We're working with clients to adopt their ideas into the virtual world, and obviously enable our clients to not only express themselves in terms of the clothing that they wear, but also their virtual identities. So there's a lot more to come with that. Let me think. I just finished a contract where I was working with a fine artist to take some of his ideas and virtually sculpt them and then 3D print them. His name's Lefty Out There, and he just had a gallery in Los Angeles where we showed a bunch of those 3D printed pieces. That was super cool. That's something in the fine art world. Like I said, I was just working on my costume concept series, Daughter of Argus. That was a personal project, but maybe just a little bit of a sneak peek. I'm in a bit of negotiations with a couple studios to maybe see if there's a next chapter to this collection. So that's very exciting. And then I have a couple film projects. I can't say anything specific there, but I'm doing costume concept art for a couple small film pitches that hopefully could get off the ground and turn into something much bigger. So yeah, it's been a cool start to the year. I'm very fortunate.
All right, awesome. And who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Oh man, there's so many. Honestly, like go to my Instagram and see who I'm following. All my favorite artists are like working currently today. Probably more generally speaking, or more of a macro view, probably the artists and designers that have influenced me the most personally in the fashion realm, most definitely Alexander McQueen. You can most definitely see that influence on my work. More traditionally speaking, Gerald Brom. I don't know if you're familiar with the painter. He's an incredible fantasy illustrator, oil painter. Just has an incredible understanding of human anatomy and how to bring a kind of almost a dark sexiness into basically anything that he's crafted. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Yeah, there's a ton of working concept artists right now who that's who I really look at because they're on the cutting edge of conceptual design. So just to name a few off the top of my head, my mentor Jared Morantz, Konstantin Sekaris, my friend David Masson, who I think is one of the most visionary concept artists working in film today. So yeah, a bunch of contemporary concept artists I think are really pushing the envelope for the next concepts that we see. And obviously, we're taking a look at that with all the new film and television that's coming out. It's always on the cutting edge of design.
Wow, that's a list.
Just to rattle off a few, yeah.
Yeah. And all right, we talked so much about art, for this whole an hour and a half or something we've been talking. But I want to ask you this: what non-art related stuff you got going on in your life that is completely non-art related, by the way?
There's other things to life than art, really? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know, I guess.
I'm the wrong person to ask about that because I'm obsessed. I do what I do and I kind of don't do anything else. It's not healthy. I don't recommend this to anyone, but yeah, that's what I do. everything's kind of tangential to that. But like I said, I'm very interested in technology, how that impacts the visual arts, entrepreneurship. I'm working on a couple companies as well. Obviously, fashion, I'm seriously interested in. Really outside of that, like I try to maintain a bit of a balance with my health as well. You and I talked about this a little before the podcast too. You had some good tips, but things that have seriously helped me, work long hours, for many days in a row at the desk job has been yoga, jujitsu, indoor bouldering, even just traditional weightlifting. So yeah, that's like what I do that's really outside of the realm of visual arts.
Yeah, one thing, I think one of the hardest things for me is actually chill and actually relax. Like my relaxation is just add cheap dopamine, like video games, junk food. Like that's my relaxation and break from the work that I need to do, which is really wrong. Like I wish, because here's the thing, I need to take a hike in natural park or something, or in a jungle, or take a hike in the outdoors. But whenever I do that, I'm always worried about what the things I need to do in the house.
I definitely relate. Do you bring a sketchbook when you go for a hike?
Not so much, honestly. And I used to, but yeah.
I've found that to be a really excellent way to unplug, like you said, like actual relaxation. But then, you probably relate to this. There's always like this external dread, like, oh, there's this design in my head, I need to be getting it on paper, or there's this client project. So if I have like that visual media, sometimes I'll go to like a museum and just like draw the like the exhibits there. And that can be a really nice way that I feel like I'm still progressing in my craft, but also like taking a break. So highly recommend bringing a traditional sketchbook and going out in nature.
All right. And yeah, as we mentioned, balancing things out is kind of hard, right?
Especially if you're obsessed. Yeah.
I think the best takeaway from what you said is one addiction at a time. I really love that line.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that.
I'm doing that right now, by the way. Like right now, the only things I'm focusing in my personal life is just, getting the quota of the podcast numbers to closer to 300 as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And like after this podcast, I have another group discussion podcast tomorrow, which isn't officially in my quota, but there's 2 other podcasts I've booked, like, which is episode 282 till that. So I have 18 more episodes 18 more people to find and record episodes with. But I mean, it's just March, so I have time. I can manage 18 people by, in 9 months, okay, I guess.
Definitely.
And and another thing is just weight loss, because I gained quite a lot of weight in the past like year or two because of the stress eating and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm right now in a phase that I'm just eat 1 meal a day. So I made myself, comfortable with that. And I'm just avoiding sugar as much as possible, avoiding processed things as much as possible.
Nice.
But here's the thing. I have other bad habits, which is like, procrastination, have bad sleep schedule, not working out a lot at all, unfortunately, right now, these days. And so, yeah, first I'm going to deal with that, then I'm going to add more stuff to it. But yeah, to extension of that point, I think it's really important to not take all things at one time. I mean, if you have strong willpower, anything is possible. Don't get me wrong. I'm be honest. I am kind of weak in willpower sector. I'm kind of not ashamed to say that. But yeah, do you have anything to add on to that based on your experience?
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to touch on this as well, especially, like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the world, especially with creatives and how technology is impacting this. So I think more so than ever before, it's important to, take care of your mental health. And a big part of that, maybe the most important part of that, is also taking care of your physical health, which obviously sitting at a desk in front of a screen for long hours, stressing about your future career as an artist, and if you're going to lose your job, is obviously very detrimental to your mental health. So, yeah, like we said, I think before the podcast, taking it one, we said addiction, but, taking it one step at a time, where instead of like, I need to lose weight and I need to stop drinking and I need to do this and this and this, do one thing, focus on that one thing. What's the most important? If you could only cut out one thing or add one thing to your life, what's the very first thing you would need to do? Maybe for you, that's like figuring out your sleep schedule. Probably for me, that one's important too. I was drinking an energy drink for this podcast. I'm trying to cut that out completely, right? But I wanted to cut out alcohol first. So I'm like a year and a half, not even a drop of alcohol. So like one thing at a time. All of those things are going to build on each other. And then before you know it, you have a few of those things under your belt and you're at the next level of the game.
That's kind of really weird because I've, like, for periods of my life, I've smoked cigarettes for 8-9 months, but I've never got addicted to it. I mostly like the smoke of it, right? The smoke that puffs out. With alcohol, I just liked it when I had a migraine or it was a special occasion, or I just needed to sleep to battle my insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird. I never get addicted to this stuff.
That's good.
What I get addicted to is salty food.
Oh, that's your weakness, huh?
Yeah, but I've not been addicted to sugar, honestly.
No, that's good. I'd rather take salt than sugar.
Yeah, but I'm super addicted to salty, like spicy food, which is also not very good for you. I mean, if you eat it at the same amount I'm eating, it's not good for you, but in moderation, and I think you can just take it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird. I never got addicted to alcohol. I never understood, like, I never felt the withdrawal. I don't know.
That's great, man. That's great. Dude, I would say if you're not addicted to cigarettes or alcohol, or
listen,
sugar,
out of curiosity, I tried.
Really?
I don't. Yes, especially with cigarettes. My body never didn't give a shit about the nicotine.
Damn, that's great, man. That's great.
I'm confused by that. It's kind of unfair. I'm missing out.
I don't know if you're missing out on anything, but
I'm just joking, of course. Yeah.
Hey, man, you got to take every advantage you're given in this life. So
yeah.
Happen to be one of those people. More power to you, man. That's great.
Yeah, like it's like everyone has their own buffs and nerfs, just like in video game characters. Like for me, I have to, for example, like take pills to sleep, which I don't usually sleep. I just instead of sleeping at 7 a.m., I sleep at 4 a.m. So yeah, that's what it is.
Definitely there. Do you ever do you'll like stay awake for like 3 days straight, just like working constantly? You can't sleep. And then you'll just crash on like the 4th day.
That's what happened. I don't know. Should we tell the story of what happened like 2 years ago?
Let's
just tell people. All right, listen. 2 years ago,
only if you're comfortable with it. Yeah.
I'm comfortable, man. It's fine. I've said it in the podcast before. Like,
okay.
But yeah, 2 years ago, actually, we were supposed to. Me and Xander were supposed to do the episode, but here's something that happened. Listen, I don't know the exact date, but a day before that, I didn't sleep at all. So it was 2 days straight being awake, and I was forcing myself to stay awake until and it was, I think, 8 p.m. my time when we were doing the episode, if I remember. Yeah, because I remember it was 7:52 or something. I clearly remember it, and I was like, I'm going to risk my hours for a second, and that's a very dangerous game.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell asleep, and I woke up, there was emails, Instagram messages, Ramtin, are we doing this? And I felt like, oh my god, I went into panic mode. And yeah, but I think I think a message, but I got nothing bad. But I mean, it's fine. Like, I mean, understandably, like, I would be kind of like, pissed off as well. But that being said, I lost that. Like, I stayed awake for 2 days straight, and it crashed, as we mentioned. Right. Yeah. And this hasn't happened once before, as I mentioned. It happened to another podcast guest as well. So it's 2 times in my record what I'm trying to fix. So out of 2 records, this one is down. So there's 1 more left. Right.
Yeah.
Which actually the other one also said yes to the podcast. I should message him back in May, in the future May. So yeah, my record will be 0 and clean and a clean slate. So right.
Exactly. And so, yeah. Hopefully, he's a fellow artist. He understands.
He is. Yeah, he is. He does. Yeah.
Like I said, no hard feelings at all, man. Dude, I've missed calls with clients and things like that. No hard feelings whatsoever.
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries.
The podcast probably would not have been as good quality, too.
Exactly.
No sleep. We did a much better one this time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a funny thing. I mentioned before the call that I applied for a university in the Netherlands, and for the intake, exam, I needed to do an interview to show my portfolio and a game project I made based on the requirements they wanted. So I think I told this story before on the podcast, like once or twice before. But it was 12 p.m. Netherlands time, Central European time, and which from my Istanbul time, it would be 2 p.m. So out of excitement, I didn't sleep at all. Guess what happened? I should have been prepared at like 1:50, 2 p.m. But again, around 11 a.m., I rested my eyes for a second, and boom, it's 2:40, 40 minutes past the interview time.
Damn.
And I checked the emails, and the guy said, "Oh, Rampton, I think there's something wrong with our website. It's a new website we made. I think the time didn't show well. Well, don't worry, we can just make an appointment." And I was so pissed off that because I saw the next interview, and it was 10 days later, and I couldn't live with the fact for the next 10 days that I missed this opportunity for such a stupid thing that I've done multiple times. So what I did, I emailed them and I said, "Oh, please, like, could we do it today or something like that?" And they were like, "All right, sure." The guy was really chill and cool. I really liked him. And I did the podcast. Everything went well. I got positive feedback and I got the admission. But it's like one of my biggest problems in my whole life, sleep. And it's just my brain is super hyperactive.
Damn. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's like a double-edged sword. If I can use this, like, in my advantage, I can have crazy output.
Yes. Right? Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time,
you crash hard. Yeah, that's tough, man. Yeah, everyone kind of has, like you said, like a video game character. You have your pluses and minuses. Yeah, that's gonna be an important one, especially as you get older, to get a hold of.
Oh yeah, I think here's the thing. Like I'm feeling something. Like when I was 15, 16, I could just spring like do a keep up from the bed and just jump up without no problem. But right now, if I don't even have my 8 to 9 hours of sweet sleep, I'm like a zombie.
Yeah. No, I definitely relate. I'm 31 now, and when I was like, especially in my late teens, early 20s, maybe even the mid 20s, I was doing all-nighters all the time. I would just stay awake for like 3 days straight. My employer never knew, just working constantly, man. And yeah, that I slowly like started crashing harder and harder and like trying to get the work-life balance like under my belt more and more. I'm still not perfect at it. It's most definitely tough. But yeah, I think that's like the personal battle you and I both need to figure out. It's gonna pay off, man. It's gonna be worth it if we can get a handle on it.
Yeah, as we said, balance is everything. Like, and folks, like, I know like this might sound very cliche, but your habits can have a compound effect in the long run.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's just math.
Yeah, and you're going to pay the price of your good habits and bad habits in the long term. So pick your poison, honestly. And with that being said, I think we reached the end of the podcast. And thank you so much for taking your time out of your schedule to come on this podcast. And I'm really glad we could, actually finally do it. But there's one final question, a section, which is called Time Capsule, all right? So I'm just going to say it like this. Imagine if you had like a very short, limited window of time, right? And you could say anything. So what I want you to say is summarize and tell us the most valuable life lessons you've learned in your life as a human till now.
Yeah.
That you could tell to anyone who's listening. The most valuable things and most important things you've learned till this point.
Damn, you didn't put this question on the list. This is a really tough one.
Exactly. I also didn't put your favorite artists and designers list on the list I sent. I don't put these questions to anyone because the guest has to put on spot. What?
Man, the most valuable?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a quick second because I wanna give the audience something good. Man, the most valuable. Man, at the risk of sounding like a cliche, I have to say probably the most valuable lesson, the most valuable advice, and the most valuable actions I've taken in my life personally is like honestly pursuing what I've been most interested in. Find a way to aggressively carve out time for yourself to focus, to engage, to really get into that zone of interest for what you're passionate about, what you can engage in, like at all costs. I know that that video game is like really calling to you, or I know you have like these social obligations that you need to fulfill, or I know that you have to go earn money, but like you have a limited amount of time on this earth. You know, that's the human condition. Find a way to like really engage in what you love. And like if you can do that, you've already won because you just engaged in the most important thing. But the more you can do that, the more you're going to win in the long term too. I've never seen that advice go wrong, I don't think. Yeah, that's off the top of my head. Hopefully that's valuable to hear.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the funny thing is actually a lot of people always, worry about if their answer is cliche. The subjects, of course, get repetitive, but the interesting thing is the way everyone expresses them differently. So that's the point of this question.
They're probably cliche for a reason, right? Like,
yeah,
human conditions. We're all human, so like it makes sense that I'd love to ask you the same thing. What's been like the number one for you? But then I'd also love to hear like what's the best one that you've heard from a podcast guest.
Interesting. It's kind of funny because a lot of people always, turn this question back at me, and every time I give a different answer based on the context of, the things that have been going on in my life. So I've recently, given this answer to, I think, Kevin Becker's episode recently.
Okay.
And first, let me actually think, what was the best one I've heard? Like, I think there was it's kind of weird. Like, my memory is not really good with that. Like, there's some really good ones, but I don't have a specific one that's really, just sticks out in my head.
Interesting. I kind of imagine you've been hit with a lot of good answers because you do have a lot of really excellent guests on your podcast. So if anything, it's more motivation for the audience to go check out some episodes.
Yeah, you can just go on Instagram. I always summarize and shorten the answer to this question as a third post of the Instagram. So you can just go on Instagram and just read every answer like very easily. And you can only get it on Instagram. Like for every platform I upload, I always make a special content for it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, no, I really love seeing those posts on Instagram, by the way. They're really cool.
Yeah, thanks so much. And also, just to give you an answer right now, if I could.
Yeah, hit me with your best one. You put me on the spot.
Sure. No worries. Honestly, without any hesitation, and doubt, just ruthlessly follow your intuition and gut feeling, even though it seems scary. If I could summarize my main best advice I've experienced in my whole life that always led me to good results, and anytime I didn't follow my gut, it always led me to bad results. I'm a very intuitive and emotional person, and for me, for my drive, intuition has been really important. Like anytime I ignored it, I paid the price. And anytime I have a thing with, like, I have an intuition with I have a really strong intuition. I like to think when I meet someone and see someone, sometimes I can feel something out of them, some weird energy. I really believe in energy, I know it sounds really weird and, kind of like, spiritual, but no, I'm not talking in that regard. There's just, I don't know how to define this thing, but people have energies,
Yeah. Well, you gave me your intuition about your potential career as a mechanical engineer, and I thought that was really interesting. That's a good example, I think.
Yeah, and like there's so many of there is instances like I said, but basically, my main point is just follow your heart, and by heart I don't mean what you like, because following what you like is not always best. Following what you like and you're talented as is the best in a capitalistic world. Then after that, go follow whatever you love the most, Because I like a lot of things, but I'm not super good at them. So I'm just leaving them as side objectives, for future. Does that make sense?
I like it. Yeah, there's a huge difference between what you like and what you love. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you love, also there's two different things. You can love something and not be good at it, but you can love something and be talented at it. But at the end of the day, if you love something, regardless of how bad you're at it, you can become great at it.
It's very true.
There's so many of these things to consider based on your situation in life. You should pick, which path you choose. If you're in that serious, need for money, and you have to make money as soon as you can, go with something you're talented in, and you might not even particularly like.
It's very true. Yeah, no, that's good. It's funny. One of the quotes that I saved that you posted, it was a quote from. I'm not familiar with this artist. Help me with his name. Jocelyn Mako.
Oh,
I probably butchered
Jocelyn
that.
McCove. Jocelyn McCove, yeah.
Jocelyn, is that how you say
Just
it?
Jocelyn. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, he or she?
Hee.
Okay, yeah. He said, in our lives, everything depends on how many mistakes we have made in some sense, how many times we try at things we think we like or we actually like and are passionate about. So basically, the more mistakes you learn from in life, in anything, you get one step closer to reaching your goal. This also applies to art as well. Yeah, I really like that one. In one of the questions you had sent me in the email to prepare for the podcast, it was, what would you say to your 18-year-old self? And I would like give them that quote: make a ton of mistakes, like make as many mistakes you possibly can. Don't beat yourself up for it. Beat yourself up a little bit because it's a mistake, right? But keep moving past it, make more, embrace that. I really like that quote. Yeah.
Speaking of that quote, there was a quote I think I've read somewhere when I was 16, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I put that quote in the front of one of my school presentations, and it goes like this: a professional or a specialist is someone who made the most amount of mistakes in a certain field.
Mm. Oh,
No,
yeah.
that's interesting.
Any entrepreneur will tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I hope anyone who listened by at this point enjoyed the talking episode and this new format. And by the way, do let me know if you like this format, or do you like me just using Zencastr, have put two people's faces, separately, and have it read above us, or we just have it like this. This way actually is much more easier for me to edit and has less, risk of burnout for me in the long run. But yeah, do let me know which one do you prefer. But with that being said, again, Xander, thank you so much for coming on for this episode. I really appreciate it, man. And thank you to anyone, again, who tuned in to listen. If there's any comments or suggestions, as I mentioned, leave them down in the comment section down below, or send me a message on the Kouryer Podcast Instagram page. And with that being said, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Till next episode. Bye-bye.
Really appreciate it, Ramton. It was great talking with you, man. Peace.
Awesome, man.